Today's Leading Women, episode 567, with the wonderful Dawn Andrews.
Women all over the world, get ready for inspiring and empowering interviews from women at the top of their field who are kicking butt in their business and who are prepared to share shocking revelations from being in the limelight. You are now listening to Today's Leading Women with Marie Grace Berg.
Podcast your passion. Yes, did you know you can podcast your passion, make a difference, and make money talking about what you love talking about? That's how I get to do what I'm doing, talking to wonderful women every day here at Today's Leading Women. Want to learn how I did it? Go to podcastyourpassion.com. That's www.podcastyourpassion.com.
Hey everybody, Dawn Andrews here, the video diva, and I am excited to have a chat with you today about my good friend Marie Grace Berg. She is a podcaster, as you will see by her lower thirds, but she's much more than that. She has honed her podcasting skills by interviewing more than 500 women entrepreneurs in her daily podcast, which is called Today's Leading Women. And now she helps purpose-driven women entrepreneurs grow their business and expand their influence through podcasts. And you know that I'm about expanding influence through video. There's a lot of synergy between what Grace is up to and what I'm up to. And that's why I'm really excited to have this conversation and interview with her today. So her clients rave about how adding a podcast into their marketing mix has skyrocketed their lists, their connections, their influence, and their bottom line. And who doesn't want that? Because I know I do. And she's on a mission to help 1,000 purpose-driven entrepreneurs launch their podcasts by 2017, which is why we're having this conversation today. I want to help bring out and reveal some of what she's up to so that you can really get the benefit of that. So here's what I really think is interesting. And I think she'll tell us a little bit more about that. But she lives in 2 places, and I will leave the mystery of that to when we start talking, but I'd love for you to learn more about Marie. So I am going to bring her on screen now and just welcome her to the conversation. Here we go. Hey, Marie, how are you? Oh, I lost her for a second. There you are.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I think I clicked the wrong button. I'm still new to this Google Hangout, so I feel like, oh my God, what did I do now? Well, thank you so much, Dawn, for such an awesome introduction. Thank you for having me here. I'm so glad to be talking to you and to your viewers and listeners as well. So thank you.
You're so welcome. So as we talked about earlier, we're gonna be chatting about podcasts today. Yeah.
Yes.
And one of the things that I'm really curious about, Marie, is why do you find that podcasting is so powerful for people in business, in their marketing mix? What is it that makes podcasting such a great addition to somebody's marketing in their business?
I am so glad that you asked that question because I'm so passionate about this topic. And so let me tell you a little about podcasting. You know, podcasting really is a growing platform, and it's not going to go anywhere but up. And think about it, there are about 575 million active users on iTunes alone. You know, that's more than the whole population of the English-speaking countries in the world combined. It's like 500 million listeners in there. And you add the platform of SoundCloud and Stitcher Radio, and you become unstoppable. That's why I'm so passionate about this. And the good news is that this is a huge untapped market, meaning there is gold waiting to be harnessed in this platform, you know. And other statistics shows that there are only about 225 thousand active users on or active podcasters out there, versus about 450 million blogs out there. So if you are a blogger or planning to become a blogger, see what you are really up against with. So really passionate about it. Plus, if you walk around the street and ask people, chances are only 4 out of 10 people will know what a podcast is. You know, that means it's a wide open market. I mean, I'm really, I did a survey actually, and because I want to prove it to myself too. And so I did that one, and I asked people, and yeah, actually, there are very few people who know what a podcast is. And that's why I said it's a very lucrative platform because there's not too many who knows what a podcast is. So I'm really seriously consider adding a podcast to your marketing mix because it will help you grow your business in ways that you never imagined, like building your list, your email list, your audience, your influence, and your bottom line, like what Dawn just shared with us, is what we're really in business. One of our drivers in building a business, because that's what I love too. So that's about podcasting, why it's so important to add that into your marketing mix.
So I think it's great to hear that that it's such a wide open market. So just to restate some of the things that I thought were interesting from what you said is that there are 575 million blogs out there, which I think in one of your special reports, which I found really interesting, by the way. So make sure that you go, and we'll give you a link a little later to be able to download these special reports that Maria's put together. But there are 575 million blogs, which is like one blog for every 14 people in the world. That's a lot of blogs. And in general, people are on the go and listening, or they're on their phone and watching more than they're taking the time to sit down and read. And it just is a fact of life. Well-written blogs are still always a great place for people to find you, and a home for people to go deeper with your information. But it's great to hear that there are 225,000 active podcasts in that iTunes universe. And so there is, I mean, compared to 575 million blogs, and the opportunity for your unique voice to be captured and shared, and your unique conversation and points of view to be shared, is really exciting. I think that's wonderful. But here's my next question for you, Marie. What are some of the objections that you hear, the reasons why people say no to podcasting? What are people's concerns?
All right. So one of the biggest objections that I see people have on podcasting is that it's too technical.
And so what are some of the technical challenges that people would face? How would you help them overcome that fear or concern? Because I face that in the world of video as well. For instance, right now, Maria and I are having we're in a Google Hangout. We both have webcams and microphones. So in terms of the technicality of it, we pretty much just clicked some buttons, turned on the program, and here we are talking to you. But I do think that there's a big hump. So they have a misconception that it's too technical. What does it take to create a podcast?
All right. So, I agree with you. It's one of the many hurdles or challenges that people have, but actually it is just a misconception. Podcasting is actually not that hard. It's not that complicated. And if I had to give you the basic 3 things that you need as a podcaster or to be able to podcast, it's going to be your computer, your internet, and a microphone. Nowadays, we have everyone, almost most of us have computer and access to the internet. Our computers have built-in microphone, although I highly recommend to have an external microphone. But basically, those are the 3 main components of launching a podcast. So it's not that complicated as other people think it is. I think a lot of people also think that it's hard to get started. I think because they don't know what are those things that they really need to have in order to start a podcast. So it's not really that complicated as people think it is. I guess because we tend to think of, for example, producing radios with all the bangs and whistles and like that. It's no longer like that nowadays. With all of the technology that we have nowadays, it's so easy.
So tell me, remember how I mentioned at the beginning of the Hangout that Marie lives in 2 places. Very fancy. And so I would love for you to talk a little bit about where, give us the big reveal of where you actually live in the world and how podcasting actually fits with that lifestyle, and how you got started in podcasting, because I think that there's some freedom to be gained for people around this idea of podcasting and getting started by hearing your story.
All right. Yeah. So I am so lucky because I get to live half of the time in California and half the time in Norway. And I have this business that I can operate wherever I am with just my laptop and an internet, and of course, my microphone. And having a podcast really affords me this flexibility and this lifestyle that I've managed for so long. But, it wasn't always like this, not too long ago. I was that burned out nurse. I was working graveyard shift. I was pulling back-to-back 12-hour night shifts in the emergency room. So that I can get a few weeks off to travel to Norway and be with my husband. So I had to endure those long months of being away with each other. And this was really killing me. I couldn't forget the tears and the sadness every time we parted from each other. My husband was suffering and I was suffering as well. And I knew this has to change. I had to find a way for us to be together. So in 2012, I made a decision to quit my nursing job and move to Norway. I knew I had to, and when I moved to Norway, I knew I had to find a way to generate income. So I did what everyone does. I searched Google, and that was when I came across the idea of podcasting. And for me, I knew I hated writing, so blogging was not really for me. But podcasting, getting to talk about, what I love talking about, just sounded like fun for me. So that's I started, really learning, and like what you said, learning through the school of hard knocks, as they said. I love that phrase. So I needed to, so I just jumped in and learned everything I can about podcasting. And luckily, I found a coach, my mentor, and I jumped in with both feet. So within the first 15 months of my podcasting, I have interviewed over 500 women entrepreneurs and built a sizable following. And I was having fun and meeting amazing people and making money whether I was in Norway or in the States, or even on when I go on vacation. So that is why I'm so passionate about sharing the power of podcasting to your listeners, to everyone, especially women, because there's lack of women podcaster in the podcasting space, and I want to change that. That's one of my mission as well.
So here's what I think is so great about that story is that you live in two different places. You gave up a life that wasn't working and took a leap of faith, and podcasting was your avenue through into this next phase of your life. That you got your coach, you dove in, and in 15 months' time, you had 500 podcasts, beautiful conversations with women entrepreneurs that I'm sure also gave you the opportunity to learn a lot more about business, gave you the opportunity to grow, and then built your influence and your list along the way, all while you're traveling between two different places, because the podcasts, once you record them, live on and they continue to market and educate and help give back to your audience over and over again. And I love that about podcasting, and I love that about video, and I love that especially for women, because we are busy people. Some of us are moms and want to be able to spend time with our children. Some of us want to be able to spend time with our husbands, our partners, our families. We just want to be able to have a more flexible, freedom-based life. And if you can create podcasts and you can create video, then you don't necessarily have to be in one place all the time. And I love your story, Marie, in how you created a life that you loved, and then it all came through the microphone to get you there. I just think that's so beautiful.
Thank you. It is. I wouldn't trade it for anything else.
So, okay, I will admit openly that I have tried podcasting, and I think I've made 2 of them. And where I feel like I went wrong with getting my podcast started was being a little overly ambitious, like trying to do too much too soon. Maybe making my podcast too long, because then I felt like I had to edit it, or I had to make it perfect, make it special. So I'm wondering what you hear when you're talking with your students that you're teaching podcasting to, or even with your guests. What are some of the challenges that people face, or where do you think they go wrong when they're working on a podcast or trying to get started with it?
All right. So there are quite a few mistakes that people make when they start their podcast. And I'm going to touch on one of the biggest, which I really feel so passionate about, because I see these people, I see this being done over and over again. And I feel so bad, because I don't want people to get frustrated and disappointed and badmouth podcasting because they couldn't make it work. So I have three mistakes that that are really making people so miserable, that keep on happening over and over again out there. But I'm going to share you the top one, the biggest one. And the biggest one people make when starting a podcast is they don't have a monetization strategy. Let's admit it. We podcast. We are not going to be podcasting just for the sake of podcasting. We are going to be podcasting to have a purpose. And one of that purpose is to be able to monetize that podcast. Podcast, of course, is a content strategy platform, but if you can use it strategically, it is a great monetization platform. So if there's something that I want to share your audience and listeners, is that this mistake of not having a monetization strategy is really a killer. I mean, I really feel bad, but it doesn't have to be that way. I mean, there's a way that you can start monetizing your podcast even on day zero. You don't have to wait for 3-6 months hoping that there will be sponsorships, and that, sponsorships is an icing of the cake. This is not going to be your main monetization strategy, and I teach this in my upcoming webinar also. So that is one of the great mistakes that I see people have, expecting that, okay, once they launch their podcast, it's going to start making money. It really boggles my mind why people are doing that, because they're really doing disservice to themselves and to their listeners as well. You are creating content and they say them, you need to ascend those people. They need some, if you have a program or courses, for example, that are going to benefit your audience, why not offer that one? And if you don't have courses, for example, then find courses from other people that you can promote as an affiliate. That is one of the biggest, the easiest way actually to start monetizing your podcast on day one. So like what I've said, on my upcoming webinar, I teach my 3-step monetization blueprint or strategy that you can start using right away and start monetizing your podcast instead of waiting months down the road after all this hard work that you put into and getting no result.
Oh, see, now that just makes me so happy, because when I started to do my podcast, I just knew I wanted to have conversations with interesting people, which is fine, but you still sometimes need to pay an engineer. Like, you don't necessarily have to pay an engineer when you're just getting started, but at the time I was doing it, I thought that's what you're supposed to do, right? So I was putting money and time and energy out to do these, but I did not have a monetization strategy. And as soon as you said that, I was like, ooh, what is it? What is that strategy? So you mentioned that you have your upcoming webinar on podcasting. If you could share with us the webinar and the title and some of what we can expect to learn when we get together with you, that would be great. Because now you've got me all fired up to start. One of the things that I do with my videos is I strip the audio out. So it's here to be turned into a podcast. Even this conversation, after we're done creating this hangout, the audio can be taken out of the video and converted to a podcast. So you kind of get two lovely pieces in one. And now that you've shared this with me, you've got me very excited about podcasting. So tell me more about the webinar.
All right. Yeah. So, but before I touch on the webinar, yes, absolutely. I mean, the videos, you can turn them into audio and written content actually, or your written content, turn them into a video and podcast. So it's so easy to repurpose those contents and distribute them among these very different platforms that we have nowadays, that we can tap into and tap the markets that are on that kind of platform. So some people are going to love watching videos. Some people are going to love listening to audios, and I love listening to audios. I do them all the time when I'm doing, or when I'm up and about, for example. And your written content, of course, for those who read. So it's a no-brainer to really repurpose your content. So can't wait for you to get your podcast out there done. So anyway, thanks for asking about my webinar. So yeah, if you are thinking of starting a podcast this year and are overwhelmed with even just the idea of starting a podcast, or are scared of the technical aspects of launching a podcast, or you don't know how to get started, or you're not sure you're not sure about the benefits of a podcast to your business, you're not getting enough clients for your club programs, you're not attracting those clients, you are not creating enough attention, then I really encourage you to join, to be on my webinar, to attend my webinar. It's called launch a profitable podcast now, and you can get your free pass at podcastprofitsystem.com/Dawn2, which is the number 2. Again, that's www.podcastprofitsystem.com/Dawn2. And we'll put this link somewhere so you can just click on it. And here are some of the things that you're going to be learning on this podcast. So I'm going to be sharing you my monetization strategy, how to start your podcast and monetize it on day 0. I'm also going to be sharing you how to map your podcast now, so you can start planning your podcast today. You don't have to wait months and months down the road. Plus, like what I've said, I'm going to give you my 3-step monetization blueprint that I use, and I also provide my clients to be able to have the strategy to be able to monetize your podcast right when you launch, or right when you launch on day 1. And like I said, you can get this by joining me on my webinar at www.podcastprofitsystem.com/Dawn2. That's the number 2.
So fun. I'm really, the big takeaway for me today, Marie, from talking with you is the monetization strategy. And the reason why that resonates so strongly for me is that most of us that are in these heart-centered entrepreneur, coach, speaker, author, serving and helping to heal an audience, for instance, don't usually think first about the business strategy. I know that's what I do because that's what I do for a living, but that's also part of the reason that I teach the video program that I teach, is that I'm trying to bring that piece together. And that resonated so strongly for me with what you said, is having this message that you're looking to get out, but making sure that you're matching the value that you're sharing and that you're bringing into the world and into a conversation and into a business community, with having the monetization on the end to take care of yourself. And I just think that that's beautiful, that that's the very first piece that you're covering. And I also know for all of you that are watching out there from having conversations with Marie behind the scenes a little bit, she also has some incredible gifts for those of you that register for the webinar. Some great things to just get you started right away. We talked a little bit about some of the mistakes that people make when they're podcasting, and I know that that's one of her free gifts. So there are really juicy things for you if you decide to go and register for the webinar. And I want to encourage you to do that right away right after the hangout. Click over there, go to profitable. Tell me again, Marie.
www.podcastprofitsystem.com/Dawn2.
Perfect. The number 2, you said, yes?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm looking forward to being on that webinar. I think it's going to be really powerful information. And for those of you that really get hung up typing and writing, I love to write. I certainly can express myself on a page, but the speed and the immediacy and the aliveness of being able to have a conversation, whether you're seen or whether you're heard or both, is really freeing. And especially if you're a very small business, it makes such a difference to be able to do that. So any parting words of wisdom for us today, Marie?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah, for your listeners and for our viewers out there, I really encourage you to look into this one, adding podcasting to your marketing mix. There are a lot of marketing tools that you can use, but podcasting is one of the greatest actually to connect with your client, with your prospective clients, to create that attention from your clients, from your prospective customers. There is no other platform out there that really gives you that connection, the trust, the loyalty than having a podcast. So they hear you, they follow you. They follow you everywhere. Podcasts, people listen to it everywhere. So I really encourage you to really give podcasting a thought. And whether you take me up on my program, whether you get it somewhere else, I really encourage you to think through and really plan on adding this podcasting to your mix, because it will help you really grow your business in ways that you cannot imagine. So like what I've said, I am passionate about helping you add this podcast in your marketing mix. And if you want more training on this, I'll encourage you to attend my free webinar, Save Your Spot, at www.podcastprofitsystem.com/Dawn2, and I'll see you inside.
I'm so thankful that you're here today. Thank you for spending this time with me, Marie. Thank you for teaching me some new and awesome things about podcasting. Thank you for getting us excited to learn more. I look forward to being on the webinar and to learning more about adding that to my business mix. And for those of you out there that are watching, I just really want to express my appreciation and say thank you for spending this time with us and for investing in yourself and learning more about some new avenues in marketing that maybe you hadn't considered, that hopefully are opening up some new space for you and some new possibilities for clients, for influence, and for more cash in your pocket. So that is all for today, and I look forward to a new conversation with you all soon. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Thinking of starting a podcast? Seriously consider starting a podcast of your own, remembering that it will allow you to grow in ways you never imagined. It will grow your email list, your audience, your influence, and your bank account. Go to podcastprofitsystem.com to get started. That's www.podcastprofitsystem.com.
Feeling inspired and empowered to make it happen? Then take the next step and go get your free guide to the top 10 resources that today's leading women use to stay at the top of their game, plus Marie's favorite today. Visit todaysleadingwomen.com/guide for your free download, and we'll see you on the next episode of Today's Leading Women with Marie Grace Berg.